So today we are going to learn about Chapter 2, which deals with the 13 colonies and the British Empire, from the establishment in Jamestown all the way to the French and Indian War. So we're going to learn about what started the United States, which were the original 13 colonies. So as you guys know, the Europeans that came were the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the British. And they all settled in different places and had different goals for the New World. For example, the Spanish established a strict rule over colonization. That's why it took the Mexicans so long to get the revolution, because they had no experience in how to control themselves and how to lead themselves, because the Spanish control every aspect of society. So they had some control issues. A major goal for the Spanish was God, gold, and glory. God, converting all the natives to Christianity, to Catholicism. Gold, get all the gold from the Americas and ship it back in boatloads to Europe. And glory, bring Mother Spain the pride and glory that it deserves, making it the most powerful country in the world. All trade must have gone through the Spanish control ports. Again, they control every aspect of the Americas. There was a small amount of Spaniards that ruled indigenous populations, so we have a couple of conquistadors leading a group of Native Americans in their plantations, in their encomiendas, so that they could control the sugar plantation in Latin America. Many sought to convert natives to Christianity by forcing them into encomienda system, which is basically slavery for Native Americans. So when you think of encomienda system, think of slavery for Native Americans. And sometimes they were used as trading partners, so it isn't all bad. How about the French and the Dutch? Both countries sent few Europeans and built relationship with the natives, so they had like a more friendly approach towards the Americas. The French, for example, intermarried with the natives and built extensive trading partners. So they weren't there to conquer them, they were there to find business partners in a way. Courtois de Bois was French for fur trading. They were mainly here to trade fur up in the northern parts of the East Coast. They traded beaver furs and would live among the natives. So they were very more friendly towards the native. Not completely nice, but at least treated them better than the Spaniards. The Dutch, just like the French, the Dutch built extensive trade routes, mostly in New Amsterdam. And remember, New Amsterdam is now modern-day New York. They control that northern colony, future colony. The English colonization, though, with the one that we care about, because that's where the United States started from, was a little bit different. It was most different. They had a large number of immigrants, so we had a boatload of people come from Europe to the Americas. They were different because, unlike the Spanish conquistadors and the Dutch and the French that mostly brought young male, the English actually brought men and females. So unlike other European countries, they brought over families. So they were here to stay. They weren't here to just get the resources and go back. They were here to stay. They sought economic prosperity, religious freedom. For example, the Puritans. The Puritans are named Puritans because they got disillusioned with the Church of England, so they wanted to purify the Church of England and make it more genuine with the people. And they wanted better living conditions because, remember, England was overcrowded, it was dirty, it had all these problems, religious persecution, so they wanted a fresh start. So they were here to stay. The colonies were based on agriculture, specifically sugar and corn, that thanks to some of the natives, they were able to plant. But the main crop that we're going to learn about in future chapter is tobacco. Tobacco became a large cash crop. So Virginia, South Carolina became large tobacco colonies that brought a lot of money to those colonies, and also to the it caused a dependence from Europeans for the tobacco American plant. We have the head right system. You probably remember this from last year. It benefited the wealthy. It basically, every person who paid money for indentured servants to come would get 50 acres of land. So an acre of land is about the size of a football field. So imagine getting 50 acres of land just for bringing people over to work that land. And if you get people to work that land becomes yours. 50 acres of land just for coming over here. So the head right system. Unlike the French and the Spaniards, the English colonists sought to live separately from the natives. So they were not like the French. They were not intermarrying them. They were not all lovey-dovey. They wanted to live separately. They saw them as beneath them. So they were not going to mingle with the natives. This caused, we're going to talk about this another day, This caused conflicts with the natives like the Powhatans, Bacon's Rebellion, and Piquet War, or also known as the King Philip's War. We're going to learn more about this in later lessons. The British colonies in the Atlantic coast. So we're going to learn about the British colonies, the 13 colonies. They're divided into regions. So we're going to learn about each region and why they are divided that way and what they are about. So we have the Chesapeake regions. The Chesapeake regions only have 2 colonies in the south. So it's located down in the south. It is Virginia and Maryland. Virginia, you guys know Virginia because that's where the first colony was established. Jamestown was the first successful colony that eventually started the United States. It became a charter colony where a group of individuals came to share the profit. So think of it like a company funding people to come to the new land and make money off of it. It's like an investment. So Virginia, Jamestown was supposed to be like an investment property where they could make money. They relied heavily on tobacco. Remember what I said? Tobacco is a cash crop. It was going to become a very, very important crop in Europe, hence us growing it in the Americas. It was introduced by John Rolfe, made money for the colonists, but this is important. It exhausted the land. It led to creation of the slave system led to the creation of the slave system in the South. Tobacco, we have to harvest it. We need people to get it from the ground, harvest it. So hence slaves come in. It also exhausted the land. This is going to be important later on because it dries up the land. So once you use it up, you're going to move somewhere else. That takes up more space. You're getting into more land and getting into more conflicts with the natives. Again, it exhausted the land. This led to expansion and conflicts with the natives. Bacon, again, needed new labor. We needed a new labor force. We're going to learn about Bacon's Rebellion later on. Or, very quickly, Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. It was a movement towards slaves for labor. It was a time for indentured servants. Remember, people that get to the Americas by offering to be servants for 7 years until they pay off their debt, their trip over here. There was an uprising by those indentured servants saying that this is too hard work, we couldn't handle it, we want our freedom, you're oppressing us. So Bacon's Rebellion was led by indentured servants. This eventually led to the slave labor of Africans, which we know very well in America. Maryland, the second colony in the Chesapeake, passed the Act of Tolerance. It granted freedom for worship to all Catholics. Maryland is a Catholic state, hence the name Mary, after the Virgin Mary. And it was meant as a safe haven for Catholics that were escaping persecution in Europe. But eventually it started being overwhelmed by Protestants. So they had to pass the Act of Toleration to protect those Catholics who the colony was established for. It later didn't work out, so religion was a big thing back then. We had their head right system that we talked a little bit about before. We have 50 acres of land for new settlers. Remember, the more we want people to come to the Americas. The more people that populate it, the more successful the colony is, and the more control we have over this new land. So the more people, the better. So a way to encourage people to come was the head right system. We're going to give you 50 acres of land if you come to America. If wealthy people paid your passage, they would receive land, encouraging indentured servants. So it was a dual system. Those people that couldn't pay would find wealthy benefactors to pay their voyage over here and work that land, that head right system, and that land would become that rich person. So you just would work it. You're their servant. And very, 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 very important is the year 1619. 1619 is important because 2 important events happened. The House of Burgesses, which elected the first representative government in Virginia. So it was the first type of government in the Americas. And second, it was the first group of African slaves that arrived. So 1619 is very important. Remember that. We have the New England colonies. We learned about Chesapeake. Now the New England colonies, which are up north. This includes Massachusetts, which was established by the Puritans. Remember, to purify the Church of England, and they wanted to purify the Church of England. In 1629, John Winthrop received a charter. Remember, permission from the king to come to the Americas, where Puritans believed in some of the beliefs that the Puritans had is predestination. So they believe that everybody has their destination already pre-written, that God has already decided what your life is going to be even before you live it. So predestination, and they focused on reading the Bible, and they believed that they were the model city upon a hill. So the city upon a hill, everybody should be like them. Everybody's trying to be like the model Puritans. We have Rhode Island. Rhode Island was founded by Roger Williams. He was originally established in Massachusetts, but later left because of some conflict and oppressive laws in Massachusetts, and started the colony of Rhode Island. He was an extreme separatist and advocated for separation of church and state, and he was wanting to pay the Native Americans for the land. He didn't want to just exploit them like all the other English colonists, but wanted to pay them for the land that they were using. So a lot nicer to them. And Rhode Island was the first colony to be established without an official religion. This is going to be important when we become a country. He got banished from Rhode Island, and people can practice any religion. So it was the first colony to not have an official religion. And Hutchinson advocated for female roles in the church. Unfortunately, she died before she could actually do more with it. She was killed by Native Americans. We have the middle colonies. It tended to be the most diverse demographically, religiously, and ethnically. For example, the Quakers that lived in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was founded by William Penn. Get it? Pennsylvania. And religious tolerated and opposed slavery. So again, just like the people in Rhode Island, they were a lot more tolerant towards other religions. Women in Pennsylvania had more rights. So the Quakers allowed for women's equal position in the church and other roles that they didn't have in the other colonies. So we get a lot of the laws in our future Constitution, the American Constitution, from the Quakers. So remember, the Quakers are important in the founding of the real United States. Immigrants from Germany. The economy was based on an exploration of wheat. So we had a lot of immigrants from Germany coming to the middle colonies. And last but not least, the southern colonies and the West Indies. In the in South Carolina and Georgia, rice was a major staple crop. However, it was very hard to harvest. It was very hard labor. So it was long days and long growing seasons. Nobody wanted to work on that. So because of that, many white laborers refused to work in rice fields. So those indentured servants that had to work for 7 years, they're like, nah, we're not going to be working this hard labor. Hence, Bacon's Rebellion and other uprisings against this type of things, which led again to an increase in slave labor by African laborers. In the West Indies, sugar cultivation was a major part of the economy. The West Indies is kind of like in the southern part, closest to Florida. They practice sugar cultivation. Like South Carolina and Georgia, slave labor was heavily used. The South, when you think of the South, think of slave labor. Remember, it was hard to harvest those crops that they grew there, so hence slave labor. In many instances, slaves made up the majority of the population, so in order to control the slaves, they outnumber us. So how are we going to control them? Through slave codes. Slave codes were very, very demeaning, very harsh laws against slaves to regulate slave behavior. We're going to talk about those in later lessons. And they gave incredible power to slave owners. The emergence of democratic self-government in the British colonies, it was caused by a distance from British. So unlike the Spanish that control every aspect of life in the Americas, the English had more independence, so they kind of ruled themselves. This is where we get the sense of the Americas kind of wanting to become their own country, because they've been doing it already. Since they got here, they were in self-governance, and partly due to the distance from Britain, so they did not put much control over the colonies. They had a lax attention, salutary neglect, which means salutary neglect basically means hands-off approach. So the king had a salutary neglect or lax attention or hands-off approach towards the colonies, basically meaning if you cause me no problems, if you keep giving me my money, if I keep ruling you, you guys could do your own thing. So not cause any problem and pay your dues and you're good. We have a hands-off approach. We have the New England Colonial Government, where we start seeing town meetings and elected legislature. So these are the type of self-government that we practice. White land-owning church members could vote. So if you were a white man with land, you could vote. Everybody in this room would not be able to vote. And the southern colonies, of course, they had plantation-dominated assemblies. We had an exchange of goods and services in the Americas. One of the most popular is mercantilist system, where European colonists focus on producing goods for Europeans. These goods that were valued in Europe were exported from the colonies. Native Americans